Hi Holliston, I'm John Cronin. Welcome to another episode of Just Thinking. This evening we're going to talk to a candidate running for public office. As many of you know, it's May, and that means it's town meeting time and town election time. Joining me this evening is Dan Alfred, candidate for school committee. Hello Dan, how are you?
John, how you doing?
Good to see you.
Good to see you on this side.
No, indeed. Well, this evening, Dan, we're just going to take a few minutes to start with reintroducing yourself to the citizens of Holliston, address some contemporary questions about what's going on with the school system, your goals, your thoughts, and maybe some retrospective view. But before we do, why don't you give folks a quick intro on who you are?
Sure. Well, hello everyone. My name's Dan Alfred. Again, I'm running for a second term on the school committee. My wife and I lived in Holliston since 2011. We have two kids, a 7th grader and a 9th grader, two girls. 9th grader in the Holliston Public Schools. And I served on the finance committee for 11 years, and now I've been on the school committee for the past 3. 2 as chair of the full committee, and the last year as chair of the budget subcommittee. Great.
Dan, obviously you're running for re-election. You got 3 years under your budget, under your belt. As you look back, so this is the retrospective. You're looking back. What were the greatest challenges facing the school systems when you came in 3 years ago, and how have you addressed those challenges?
Yeah. So I mean, if you think back to where we were 3 years ago, there was sort of a lot going on, just leading up to actually even before I got onto the board. The HFT, the teachers union, which includes more than just teachers, it's paraprofessionals and administrative assistants, had just voted no confidence in the superintendent, 98% or something of voting members, and we were also leading right like we are now into another contract year. So when I first got onto the committee, the timing of the no confidence vote sort of ended up being the next committee's kind of work, and so we wanted to address that. We wanted to get to see what was, figure out what was going on, and so we put together a 4-point plan, which included a community forum, which we held, answered a lot of questions from the community. We worked on trying to get some mediation between the superintendent and the HFT. We hired a mentor for the superintendent, which is a very common practice, and just wanted to sort of support her in trying to sort of improve the issues that have been raised. And then we also put out an FAQ. And that kind of worked its way out through over the summer, and then we got into contract negotiations, and that was another sort of whole challenge that played out over many months.
Right. So it was a busy start.
It was. We were off to the races right away.
Right. These challenges, how do they wash out, Dan? It's been 3 years. Do you feel like you've overcome them? You're pointed in the right direction? Are there things you would have done differently?
There are always things I think you could do a little differently, but I mean, by and large, I think that we had a good plan. I think that at the end of the day, there's just sometimes there are personalities that don't work out, and so the superintendent's announced that she's retiring, and we've hired a fabulous new superintendent. We've got a lot of new faces in central office that we're really excited about. One returning, in our new assistant superintendent for student services. And then as far as the contract goes, I think the contract worked out incredibly well. I mean, I know that we negotiated for months. We came to an agreement that I think was very fair for the teachers on compensation, but also helps us achieve some things that I think will be very beneficial for the students over the long term, including increased instructional time and a pathway towards changing the high school schedule, which we've now done. And there have been some contentiousness to it, and I think through that process, I think there are some lessons learned and things that could have been done differently. But the new schedule at the high school, which will go into effect next year, I think will be really beneficial to helping create a more equitable, so like we're not using this directed study block, this DSB period, to actually have classes so kids can get extra help, get services during those periods.
Got it. So as you look forward now in your quest for another term, one of the things that I think holistically people look at when they think of the schools, and this is not just Holliston, I think it's across the state, of the pressures that school budgets are having on community budgets and school budgets in general. How do you keep pace with inflation, Dan? And how can you talk to the citizens now about what they can expect from you over the next 3 years from a budget perspective? Do you envision any overrides? Do you envision any operational stressors that could surface? I mean, is there anything you're aware of you want to talk to them about?
Yeah, no, I mean, look, inflationary pressures are very real. They exist across the Commonwealth. You've seen a ton of different districts that have run into a lot of problems. A lot of those districts, though, have spent a lot of one-time money and built it into their operating budget. And a lot of it was sort of COVID money that is slowly run off, or they dipped into their reserves to keep things going, and now the bill is coming due, if you will. We have not done that. So we have managed our budget much more prudently than a lot of other districts, and so we're in a lot better place than other districts. And so we'll be working going forward with the town manager to sort of set budget expectations. With our last town administrator, we had a 3.25% budget. I think that's a sort of a minimum for where we need to be. But I think if we can get that, or maybe just slightly more, I think that we should be fine. Because I mean, again, 80% of our budget is employment costs.
Yeah.
And so
if you're talking about a 3.25 every year as a base and 3.5 for FY27, that outpaces 2.5% pretty quickly, doesn't it? If the town's budget is growing by 2.5%, right?
Well, but keep in mind the 2.5 is just the. I mean, you were on the assessor for years. You know this. That's before new growth. That's before all the other.
That's what I want you to talk about. So if you don't have those factors playing in, and you've got a fixed budget that's going to grow higher than 2.5%, aren't you mapping a course for an operational override downstream?
I don't think it's so far above the 2.5% that I mean, if we're not growing and we're not getting $400,000 to $500,000 of new growth a year, plus some ancillary additional revenue and things like that, then I think the town as a whole is in trouble. And I think, and you know that I've been a proponent of finding ways to get the town additional revenue. The downtown sewer district, which I know you're leading, was something that I was a proponent from a long time ago. It wasn't my idea certainly, but something that I definitely think is important. But we do need to find new revenue sources for the town so that we can ensure that we don't need to. I am pledging not to go for an operational override within my next term.
Yep.
Just so to give everyone, sort of, I don't know, comfort on that, but at least something to hold me to.
This is not one of those kind of conversations.
No,
but I can imagine a candidate would want to come in and say, I want to do X, Y, and Z, damn the cost. I intend to follow through on it and try to convince the committee that we need to focus more on building blue widgets, and it's going to cost $500,000, and if we have to put it on, there are candidates that do that.
Yep.
There are candidates that put it out there, especially ones that are new to the process. They just really want to ensure that some kind of a springboard happens.
Yep.
So when the candidates come in, the voters are always thinking, who are they? What are they all about? Yep. You're an incumbent. You're somebody they might be used to, but just the same, we are not unlike many of the other communities that have gone through some overrides and are going through overrides. And it's a mixed bag. You're not always successful. I think it's about a 50% shot. So it's something to keep an eye on, but it's not a treason test. It's just, if you're prepared to save people, it's not on the agenda, that's fine.
The springboard, I think, was my last term. I had a lot of things that I wanted to accomplish. I wanted to get a good contract for the teachers and for the town, get some things in there. But I think now we've got a great new superintendent coming on, as we talked about. I want to see sort of what he has what his thoughts are, efficiencies and places that we can, that we can look at the budget and by, I don't mean staff necessarily, but just ways that we can manage the overall district.
Yeah, that's the other side of it, and that's come up in other conversations. School committees have, I think, 3 principal duties, and general law and budget's one of them. You always have to be looking at ways to save money. Is that safe to say? Is that something in the DNA of the school committee right now?
We are constantly looking at different things and different ways of providing the educational quality that we are. And what we generally tend to do is, because with 500 employees, you do tend to have natural turnover. We tend to make shifts with turnover so it doesn't impact people, right? It's positions, not people.
Right.
But there are constantly shifts, whether it's because of a larger classes moving through the system or things like that, or different opportunities and different needs. We'll get into some of it later, but we've invested in a couple of additional special educators, an additional BCBA, which is a behavioral health.
So that's growth. Are there any areas where the school committee looked at ways to save money for the upcoming year? Is anything stand out?
Well, it's growth, but through reducing other areas.
I thought you were talking about the new UGGA money that you talked about.
No.
Okay. When you think about the FY27 budget, that's a maintenance budget, Dan?
Yeah, well, it's 3.25% level services, meaning the commitment that we made to the voters when we went for the override, plus a $60,000 ask for an out-of-district coordinator, which is above that, but was able to be funded through additional state aid that we received. And the hope there is to actually over the long term help keep more kids in district by having someone who can go to all the out of district meetings and allowing the student services administrators at each building and the student services director, who's now an assistant superintendent, to do the work in the district to work with kids and make sure that we're meeting the needs of those kids in district.
Let's move on from budget talk to policy. There's been some talk, and I believe it's landed in the form of a bill at Beacon Hill for banning cell phones in schools. Where do you stand on that?
So I think that right now at every building we have some sort of restrictions on cell phones. At the lower schools, they're not either allowed, they can be kept in their backpacks or lockers. At the high school, every class is supposed to put them in pouches. I think that to some degree that's working. I mean, it's class by class, but at least there's a policy there so the teachers can.
So educationally, people see a benefit of no cell phones in the classroom.
Yeah, absolutely.
From a policy perspective.
But looking at the bill, I have a lot of questions before I can get behind that, because first of all, it's just passed the House, so it's not it's not legislation or past legislation and law. But it does feel like parts of it could be unfunded mandates. There's discussion about needing to have secure storage facilities for phones that are brought onto campus. Technology to essentially to essentially turn the phone into a dead brick during school. Is the state going to provide, if they're going to force that, are they going to provide funding? And I think we all know what ends
so
up happening.
So if they do, you're not for it?
I think we need.
If they do not fund the fund, if they do not provide the funding, or it becomes unfunded mandate, no go.
I think we need to look at it. But I think that I also am concerned, though I've seen that the pilot they've found ways around it. But I do think that kids should, especially when they have phones, should be able to access their phones if they need to, especially in the case of emergency. The last thing I would want would be for the phone not to work, and whether it's programming or something, 911 doesn't work, parents can't reach them. You don't. One of the great things about phones is that it has an increased communication, and so you want to ensure that regardless of what you do, you don't just completely remove them. But I think that you need to restrict them during class time.
Which is being done voluntarily as a policy. The law would ban them, would change the dynamic from a policy to a law.
Correct, as I read the law, yeah.
And your hesitations are that it could be filled with unfunded mandates.
And I think that some of these decisions should be made at the local level, not the state level.
So not a law.
Correct guidance to DESE, the educate, But I think that sometimes the state, I think it's a good. It's well intentioned, but
Sure.
but I think that a lot of these things should be left to local control.
Got it. Okay. Why do we need a new high school? I'm hearing a lot about a new high school, Dan. Why do we need one?
We definitely need one. To be clear, though, the MSBA process that we're in now, the feasibility study, which we'll talk more about, is to determine whether the state is actually going to be willing to actually pay for a new high school or a refurbishment or an addition or something like that. So right now, we're not just talking about a new high school. I think we do need a new high school. So the first step was to make sure that we put into the classroom and have the proper sort of structure to get the teachers to teach the classes, right? Because it doesn't matter how great a building you have if you don't have teachers, the kids, it's still not a great system, right? And so the operational override that we had last time sort of helped, I think, put us in that vein. So now we're moving on to the building. The building is old. The doors don't work. The windows are single pane. It is insanely energy inefficient. And in fact, I think if you tried to define what an energy inefficient building would look like, you would build a Holliston High School. I've been working with our assistant director for finance and operations, and we estimate that over the next 5 years, aside from a septic replacement, there's about $30 million of investment that we would need in the high school. So, I mean, we can go Band-Aid it through if we're going to go for a new high school, but if the town decides we don't want a new high school, we've got at least $30 million of investment, new roof, new doors, new window. I mean, we've got to start investing in the maintenance of it. So $30 million is a significant amount of money. We would fund that all ourselves, or most of it ourselves. Right. And so when you're looking at that kind of calculus, it becomes pretty clear that you need a new school.
I see. Would you've had 3 years in these buildings, Dan, and you're looking at them saying, wow, they've been well maintained up to this point?
I think that we have started maintaining our buildings better over the last few years, but that I think that we could have done a better job over the years. I think that sort of when I joined the finance committee, we didn't have much set aside for capital. There wasn't a program to really have significant money to invest in things all across the town, not just with the schools.
Sure.
We've gotten better at that, but no, I think that we need to do a better job maintaining our buildings.
The question about the high school was really sort of the launch. Talk about the process, Dan.
Yep.
This coming Monday night town meeting, we'll have a feasibility study article before us. That's sort of the beginning of a process to bring the voters through what they can expect over the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, so the feasibility study is that first part. It helps get the state to where they decide whether they're going to offer us funding for a new high school or refurbishment / addition. And in addition to that, though, it takes you through. I don't believe it's full schematic design, but it starts to get options and starts to get, the building
Develops
committee.
The program, right?
Develops a program. What does the community want? What do we have? It goes through the entire school and says, what do you have now? What condition is it in? I think it starts looking at different options. One of the problems with the state funding is they have certain limits on like size of auditorium or what kind of field house that you can have. Sure. So there will be discussions about, do we try to keep those and sort of build them into a new school? If we get a new school, or do we just go without it, demolish everything? Depending on where do we place the new school? Personally, after watching everything with the DPW and them try to find a space for just something the size of the DPW, I don't think there really is other land in Holliston that's going to be available. So I think that basically we are where we are, and I think that'll work. But
there's more to this cycle, though. So you've got your feasibility, and if that passes, that'll start relatively quickly, right?
That'll start pretty quickly. It's about an 18-month process.
And there's also a building committee.
Correct.
Talk about that.
Right. So if you look in the warrant, the warrant article actually authorizes the building committee to spend the feasibility study. So the select board forms the building committee. It gets formed. They're voting members, and they go forward with actually sort of that process. They hire an OPM, they hire a
They're the
designer.
day-to-day point of contact with
Correct.
the vendor.
Yep.
Okay. And so they're working over that 18-month period with the vendor to deliver ultimately a product. Who do they deliver the product to? The state, the schools, the town, everyone?
They're gonna everyone. I mean, I would like them to also have advisory committees, or more unofficial, but where different groups can have more of an official say in sort of the process.
So you're running for re-election. If you get re-elected, you got 3 years ahead of you. If you're in the room and you're talking about what that program looks like, are you thinking that I only want to put things in the program that are eligible for reimbursement, or are you thinking of things that may not be eligible for reimbursement and would be then funded completely by the taxpayers of Holliston?
Well,
Common problem on these issues. It's people in communities across Massachusetts for years get things or ask for things that are not reimbursable, and that's a big thing.
There's a lot, and the biggest thing for us that isn't going to be reimbursable, what we're going to have to do, is a septic. I mean, the septic at the high school already is not failing, but it's close. So that'll be one of the biggest costs that we have that will not be reimbursable, but that will need to be done. I want to get a wish list from everybody. I want through the building committee.
Sure.
I want to see what people want first, and then go back and through the iterative process. My hope is that eventually we get a few different options for designs that have different features, and you can almost call them low, medium, and high cost, if you will, and get a sense from what the community wants. Do they want the bare sort of bones with the highest net reimbursement rate?
School in a can.
Right. Or do they want to go for something that has different options that might be interesting? One of the things that I really want the new high school to be is a community resource. So I want
what does that mean? Talk about that.
I want to make sure that we have that it is more open to the community access. That there's security issues, and we want to make sure that that we don't have people wandering the halls with or with kids who haven't been cleared. But at the same time, we want to make sure that there can be community productions in our auditorium, that people can access the basketball courts
during school time.
No, not during school time. I mean, you can't do it during school time, but soon after school, on the weekends.
That's not happening right now.
Not as much as it should.
I see.
Yeah.
Any other programs beyond performance or auditorium use, things like that?
I mean, whether you start renting out classrooms over the weekend to allow for
adult ed
and things like that, yeah, sure.
Oh, I see. Okay. When you think about the Holliston school system today, and you view the next 3 years, what does the enrollment look like, Dan? Is it growing, shrinking, or is it static?
Right. So our enrollment has been declining. we have, I think, like many districts around us, except for Hopkinton, been suffering from the fact that the entry-level house is just not affordable for most people anymore, and so they're going sort of further west, if you would.
Okay, yeah.
So our enrollment is declining a fair number, probably 150 students in the last 10 years decline.
How many do you have now?
It's about 2,600 or so.
All right. So you lost about 5% or so.
Give or take, yeah.
Okay.
And the numbers that we're projecting for next year before we've done school choice, so they're not like the final numbers. But as far as going forward, there are a lot of different housing projects right now that are being discussed in Holliston, and there could be others that are coming. I'm not here advocating for or against any of them, but I'm just simply saying they're there. We're watching them.
Sure.
The impact to the schools is there are different firms that do factoring and try to determine how many kids, but the biggest one in Lowland would probably be somewhere between 50 and 150 additional students. Smaller ones could be smaller, but that's going to be, if we do get growth and we include that in our MSBA application, that would be where a lot of our growth comes from.
See, okay, great. When you think about the high school, it's going to really consume most of the oxygen of a committee in the next several years. If it's not 90% of what you're doing, I'd be surprised. But there's always something else going on. And as you look ahead into the next 3 years, from a capital perspective, Dan, are there any looming projects that you want to tackle and look at?
Yeah. So my hope actually is that it is 90%, because most of the work is going to be done at the school building committee. Yes, we'll be talking about it a lot, and maybe I'm naive, but there's still a lot that needs to be done. So, but as far as capital goes, I mean, I know we got funding last October for the Placentino Miller roof, the remaining section of that. We're going through the MSBA rapid repair program, which is anything but rapid. But
2 years versus 5.
2 years. But outside of that, I mean, the septic at the high school, which obviously would be taken care of as part of the new high school project, there aren't any really huge capital needs. There's the continued need for curriculum, which still is hundreds of thousands of dollars, boilers, HVAC.
Well, you brought up the septic system here at the high school. What about septics at the other schools? Are they in good shape?
Well, they go through, you probably would know better than I would, because they go through the
treatment,
the treatment plant.
And I'm thinking along the lines of infrastructure improvements like that. You mentioned the windows in this building, for example, are single pane, energy inefficient, and so forth. Is the school committee looking at any kind of deferred maintenance projects in the other schools that are relatively new? They were really freshly built 26 years ago. And if the roof is coming due, what about other things?
We are looking at things, but there aren't any significant. I mean, the windows at the lower schools are double, are double pane. There's more, energy efficiency there.
When you put the roof on, are you putting solar on?
We have just signed the PPA and the lease for solar at Rams, which had the roof replaced already, and then on the shingled section of Placentino, and much earlier than anticipated, and so that hopefully will go on over the summer, and we'll actually begin to see the savings. Savings are pretty paltry, I'll tell you. I mean, for the entire thing, we're looking at probably 75 to 100,000 theoretically. I mean, that it's not nothing, but it's
right.
But first of all, it's a teacher, so. At the very minimum.
Yeah, those programs typically benefit somebody else, but it's also zero cost of entry. You don't have to pay for anything up front, so you get something for nothing.
And we looked at buying them. The savings was not so significantly more that when you add on to the fact that we would then own them and have to ensure the maintenance and the monitoring and everything, it just wasn't worth it.
Right. As we wind down with some of these questions, Dan, COVID's something that we all don't want to talk about anymore, but there's an echo. And certainly as you look at a system that covers K through 12, a lot of the kids that went through the COVID years are still in your school system. Whether it was COVID or just general mental health concerns on a day-to-day basis, is Holliston seeing a need for increased behavioral services for students?
Absolutely.
What's your plan?
So we've been doing some of it. What I would say is from fiscal year 22 to fiscal year 26, the current one we were in, we've seen a 25% increase in the number of IEPs and 504s, which are while we don't get into the weeds of what exactly they are, that's not our purview. We have been told that a significant amount of them are due to mental health and other social emotional challenges. And so we've hired two new special educators.
Behavioral health?
We have hired a behavioral health BCBA, and we're continuing to look at different programs. We put in place a bridge program at the middle school, which is similar to the bridge program that we have at the high school. We're doing more to try to keep kids in district, but then also, we have a director of SEL and equity who has been, working to put in place measures to improve, mental health, or at least sort of bring into the classroom different ideas, training. We have different services where you can call at any time if you're having a crisis and get help.
This question is linked to a show I did several months ago with Superintendent Kuska, Chief Stone, Chief Mike Cassidy. We looked collectively at the community's handling of young people's behavioral health. The schools are obviously the core, the center of it, and Holliston's wraparound services were quite impressive to hear. It's not a school problem; it's a community issue.
Yeah.
And it doesn't end when the bell rings. It's 24/7, and it was quite impressive. I encourage people to look back at that if they've got concerns about student mental health. Dan, as we wrap up, I want to thank you for coming in. I'll give you a few seconds here if you'd like to make a pitch for your re-election coming up on May 19th. Take a few minutes to make your pitch, Dan.
Thank you very much, John. I appreciate that and all the questions. So I hope to earn your vote on May 19th. The past 3 years have been incredibly busy, but also I think incredibly productive. We settled a contract with the teachers for the first time without going to mediation in at least 10 years. So, there have been a lot of acrimony with that, and as we get into teacher negotiations again, I think that my experience working through that process will be very beneficial there. We have also changed the start times to get Placentino and Miller on the same schedule. We have changed the high school schedule to a more equitable offering. We have invested significantly in the buildings and through town meeting support, sought significant investments. We got an override pass with 67% yes, which is just phenomenal. We have recruited an incredible leadership team that I'm really excited to see what they can do and to hear their new ideas. I mean, so they may come in and have a ton of different ideas that may sort of throw the agenda completely differently, but in a good way. We've also increased time on learning by 45 hours a year, which over the course of K through 12 is over half a year of increased instructional time for students during their education. So we've got a lot that we need to continue to do. New contract. We need to evaluate learning. I want to look at our bullying policies because that's kind of come up a lot. I want to ensure, though, that we continue the fiscal responsibility that we have done before, so we don't end up in positions like other districts have. And going into a contract negotiation is a great time to really make sure that you have your ducks in a row. So I've got significant experience, significant accomplishments, and I hope to be able to continue with the great school committee that we currently have, and we work really well together. And so I look forward to earning your vote on May 19th.
Thanks, Dan. Folks should know the contest for school committee is the only contested election on the ballot. Again, that's Tuesday, May 19th. We hope you show up to vote. Thanks for joining us this evening. We really appreciate it. Good night.